Welcome to Heidi Relationships. Today, we'll read some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. That would help the channel a lot. Thank you very much in advance.
The first one is titled, "My wife of 7 years does not initiate a kiss, nor pay a compliment, but insists she loves me dearly and is willing to do different. My wife has not initiated a kiss since about 10 months into our relationship. For the initial dating phase, we did meet up and just have makeout sessions in a Starbucks parking lot or wherever. Many sessions which she initiated. We were both busy in our jobs and she lived with her mother at this time, so we would take adventures to different settings and stay in hotels, and the passion just increased. I took a job as a bouncer in a city far from where she lived, and where we met. I finally had a small room, and she would come to me for visits and bring groceries, etc. I believe she admired my qualities or survival and ambition, even though I made little money at the time. I believe she was the first to suggest we see each other exclusively, and I agreed. At about the 10-month mark, she finally landed a job where she could use her nursing license. She asked me when I would get a job closer to her. It took a couple of months, but I was able to land a more stable security job much closer to where she lived. In fact, it was right off the path of her daily commute of her new job. I was anticipating spending more time with her and strengthening our bond. One day I quite innocently asked her if she would stop by for brief moments after work, since it was just on her way home. She took this negatively somehow, and it was our first argument, I suppose. I backed off and she backed away even more. After this time, it became clear that I was more invested in bringing our relationship closer. It changed the attraction dynamics or something. For the next few months or so we would sort of haggle over when we could meet up. I felt she sent conflicting messages because on the one hand she began to proudly introduce me to her family at functions, but on then she slowed on the physical touch and kissing. She would touch me often in front of her friends, but not so much when we were alone. Her touches seemed rationed. At about the 1-year mark, one spent Christmas at her mother's, and I was the first to tell her I was in love. She said she loved me too. Although things were a little off, I asked her if we could get a place together. I figured we could strengthen our bond if we could see each other on a regular basis. She told me she promised someone dear to her that she would not cohabitate before marriage, so I asked her to marry me. And she agreed. She said she was abandoning her morals but agreed to move in together since we were engaged. We set a wedding date for next year. I begin to notice a major shift in her behavior. Red flags, if you will. A close friend of the family was invited to a family meal, and she was drooling over him in front of me, laughing at every dumb joke. I made the mistake of showing my insecurity. It was exciting that we would be together, but I definitely should have waited because she said she was abandoning part her morals, but still agreed to move in together because it would make me happy. She initiated sex and kisses less and less and became resentful. More red flags popped up. She started paying close attention to her appearance, changed her hairstyle and stayed late at work more often. She started buying sexy underwear. She started mentioning her new boss in glowing terms frequently. She stopped kissing altogether. She started criticizing my ambition. She wanted a large wedding, but I didn't make very much money, so she took a second job. I became depressed because our passion had come to a standstill. We had some arguments and at one point I wanted to leave. She wanted me to stay, but the lack of passion and red flags persisted. An ex of mine who always had lust for me crossed my path one day. I selfishly indulged and cheated on my fiancé. Part of me thought that it would blunt my anxiety and the distance would somehow re-attract my fiancé. Well, the ex wanted me for keeps even though I wanted nothing more. She then reached out to my fiancé and told her what happened. She was crushed. Her attention came back to me though. She stopped pulling away and focused on me. It was nerve-wracking. I explained that I wanted her back. I wanted her to pay more attention to us. We got married and for a while it seemed better. I reassured her that she is all I want. We always had one common goal, to start a family. She could not conceive, so we decided to foster. I became stronger in my conviction because she showed such dedication. So, in turn, I worked harder and landed a much better job. The physical affection still wasn't coming from her, she still never complimented me, but she rarely or never turned down my advances. The one thing we always had is that the sex is good. It still bothered me deep down, and I began to question whether she was ever physically attracted to me. To me, it would seem even though there are ups and downs, at some point she would reflexively kiss me or accidentally show her attraction. We finally did adopt 2 boys, and my wife seemed fulfilled. She was nesting, asking me to fix up our new home, which I found pleasure in. It was a season of about 3 years where we worked together on our goals. I focused on my career, and she encouraged me. Over time, I would ask her in various ways if she could reach out and show me special attention. I asked her what she would need in order to feel more attracted. I read books and stumbled onto love languages. As it turns out, her language is acts of service and gifts, while mine are words of affect, physical touch. I was suffering from touch anorexia. I was tired of chasing, so I tried another tactic. I told her that I would not give hugs nor kiss her. My thought was that she would see me as less needy, and maybe miss the affection, and perhaps turn around towards me. Well, it all backfired. She became more resentful and began to pull away further. Started complaining about smaller and smaller things. I began to detach and started doing fewer chores, etc. Eventually, a new set of red flags emerged. Staying late at the office. Talking about the future in terms of her being away on exotic vacations, new underwear, cleaning her car religiously, even though she's not a neat person, new obsession with weight loss, makeup, etc. Wanting to pierce her nose, get a Brazilian butt lift, X-rated video games, not coming to bed. I became anxious and started paying attention to her more closely. I looked in her phone to find a saddening conversation with a female friend. She told her friend that she dreamed of passionate sex with an old fling. She told her friend if I didn't join her to visit family out of state this summer, she would reach out to someone she knew from social media. I confronted her, and it's been hell. She swears she hasn't started an affair, and that she just wants me to once again show up for the family, to assist in the household more and to be affectionate. I agreed but added that my needs for closeness must be met. She started initiating sex and hugs and kisses, and we made a deal that sex will occur when the time is ripe. I asked her on a date, and she became starry-eyed. I started working on the house and taking more of the household burden. I also got busy working out and taking up hobbies. The recipe seems to be making a difference. I'm still so confused because of the lengthy history of not feeling wanted. I have so many questions in terms of how far she went in her trajectory of straying. She senses I'm not all the way decided on whether I should stay. I'm concerned that we might fall back into our default of her running from me. I couldn't stand another 8+ years of chasing and feeling unwanted. I couldn't stand that if we should falter a little or if she received extramarital attention she might act on it. I'm fully aware that many of my actions earlier on ruined the attraction. She was always better at winning the silent game. I would give in rather than stand firm on my needs. I shouldn't have forced it so many times. I shouldn't have shown insecurity. And cheating early on didn't help. But I'm somewhat stronger now, more confident, and I've learned quite a bit. Did she actually turn around? Is this a temporary supplication brought about by some sort of guilt? If I continue to act attractive, will she remain attached? And finally, the main question. Since she was able to take away physical touch and words of affirmation for 6 years, was she ever actually attracted to me enough to make it work? Can the bond be made? I need to figure this out for the sake of our children and for everyone involved. If I stay while undecided, I won't be able to heal these wounds and be a leader for the family. A user in the comments said, "Honestly, it sounds like she was having an affair when you were engaged, and when she found out about you cheating she realized she could lose you, so she stopped it. Because unless you left a whole lot out, it sounds like she forgave you too easily for her not to have a guilty conscience too. And it sounds like she started another one up recently and might have quit or not, but I would say it's probably temporary change. But keep up your end and see. Another user said, "It really sounds like therapy is long overdue for y'all to have a neutral party involved to assess this situation. You may also benefit from personal therapy to handle the insecurity issues you've mentioned along with the treatment you've suffered from your wife's actions." The next one is titled, Update 1, Title Story. Is it possible a woman who never showed physical affection could change with me? For the past 6 years I, 42M, have been the giver of almost all affection to my wife, 34F. She will initiate holding hands, or playful tickling, a quick obligatory peck on the mouth before heading off to work, or a rare occasion of smacking me on the butt. The type of compliments I have received have been along the lines of, "I like that shirt on you." In therapy we discovered that the dynamics of this relationship has triggered me into an anxious style of attachment. I've done a deep dive into my own tendencies, and I can see how my part in our interactions has contributed to this dynamic. Now that I've done this work, I'm feeling liberated in that I own my experiences and needs and wishes. Knowing what I do now, I suspect my wife has a deep-seated fear of intimacy. So, I finally expressed to my wife something that which I lacked the communication skills to approach prior to now. This topic used to lead into a blowout. Last night I lovingly invited her to notice. I asked if she ever thinks about kissing me. She said yes. I asked her why she does not. And she has no answer. I asked her if she would consider examining the reasons behind this. I provided reassurance that I would support her patiently if she agreed to bring this up to our therapist. I told her that I will accept any part one may have contributed. And even if only to find out for herself. I asked her if she would do the inner work to understand this. And she agreed. I'm nervous about what we might find. The next one is titled, Update 2, Title Story. This is sort of an update on an issue in my 7-year relationship. We had a stressful 2-year period with tragedies in the family, COVID, renovating and moving into a new home, stressors for me at a new job, and raising 2 kids. My wife became distant over the course of about 6 months. I asked her in various ways if we could bring our bond closer, suggesting regular dates etc., but she disregarded, and I became depressed. But it got really bad about 4 months ago when she began to obsess on her diet and appearance. Staying later at work and becoming difficult to reach. One day I went through her phone and found she texted some very disrespectful things about me to a close friend. She mentioned to her friend that if I was unable to attend an annual family trip out of state, she will reach out to another man for attention. In counseling it was decided that she was venting. A month later she had some bizarre news for me. She explained that her brother's best friend would be there on the vacation. She says she has nothing to do with it, but her cousin invited him. A female ex-lover of this guy and also my wife's best friend has decided to take time off and travel out there for the purpose of what in my opinion appears to be a mate guard against this. Mind you, this is a trip of family-filled activities and originally just parent couples and our children. My wife has been obsessed over what she will wear on the trip, to the point of ridiculousness. Altering her entire style, with more care than a woman nesting and knitting socks for a soon-to-be firstborn child. All of this hit me really hard. I fell into a nervous wreck, anxiously attentive and begging her to tell me what I can do to fix things. I slept about 3 hours per night for the past 3 months. Our lovely counselor, witnessing me only in this state, focused all attention on me and how I'm jealous and anxiously attached, and that my wife can't feel safe expressing herself if I'm not stoic in my emotions. My wife loves this as it means no self-work or negotiation, or communication needed on her part. Well, this week I had a turning point. I learned to self-soothe and perhaps my body was just exhausted from remaining in fight or flight mode. Anyways, I remembered that I too have value and a choice. I started sleeping again, and whenever she would fail to pick up the phone I would get busy on myself. I figure that whatever happens will happen. I remembered that I am attractive and easy to get along with. I have a good career and a vision for the future. Seems she has started to turn around. She says she wants us to be together. The trip is about a week away. But If I discover that she has in any way urged this man to believe he can be part of our marriage. If she flirts or if I discover she has acted on a fantasy with him. Any hint of conversations in secrecy, and I will easily begin to wipe the memories and plans for our shared future. Now I could be wrong. Maybe she sees him as a brother. But from what I remember, they were never really close, and she didn't care for him as a person. I'm hoping this is all a bad dream, but I'm preparing for a nightmare. The next one is titled, Update 3, Title Story. My wife had news that a single male friend, we'll just call him L, of the family would be attending. To preface, we had a blowout early in our relationship, about 6 years ago, because I did not appreciate the energy my wife was giving this man. She was gazing and blushing and gritty. This guy is her brother's best friend. Since then, we dropped the topic and L would occasionally be around for family functions. I didn't think anything of it and the feeling of anxiety dissipated. My wife explained that she was never really close to L in spite of knowing him for 20 years. L had dated my wife's female best friend, and this put a wedge between my wife and L ever having the option for dating. I was comfortable with this separated dynamic. Well, this dynamic has changed. For the past few months my wife became closer to L after both attending a wedding 2 years ago. They message each other on social media on various occasions such as birthdays, holidays, and death remembrances, when before they had not. Fast forward to the family trip. My wife broke the news that he would be attending, in spite of this being a trip dedicated to a planned itinerary for 3 families with children. From day one I went downstairs and observed my wife sitting across the room with she and L facing one another, and she had an almost drunk, dazed, flirtatious look. When I approached her she looked uncomfortable and caught. I told her I felt uncomfortable and she threatened to cause a scene, and that this is all based my own insecurity. The next day was the 4th of July. They played the I Ducky game all day and all night. No words spoken but just constantly looking and checking on each other. It was the worst day of my life and I know I wasn't imagining it. Towards the end of the night something inside me gave reassurance. I decided that I would not let it bother me. She's going to do it anyways and we still have several days stuck with him. I began to simply look away. Once I had this shift, my wife came and sat next to me and asked if everything was all right. I said, sure. The next couple of days were very active for the group, and it seems they dropped the eye ducking game for whatever reason. I managed to get my wife away for a steak dinner and I chanced that maybe it was my own insecurities and imagination. Or maybe they both felt guilty or had a change of heart. But as we attended a ball game, the eye games began. This time I played it very cool. She asked me if everything is all right and I flipped it and said, "Why do you ask?" She could tell I noticed and she felt uncomfortable. When they kept on I took the kids to get snacks and left them to it. When I came back my wife and Elle stopped all duck games. On the drive back to her brother's I held her hand and began to brainstorm on how I will pretend we have an actual relationship until I can get my finances, living situation, and the divorce plans in order. The next one is titled, On Family Vacation and My Wife is Having Eye Sex with a Family Friend in Front of Me. Update 4 Title Story. The original post to this saga reached its maximum allowable replies, but I would like to see some opinions on this matter before moving forward. It's been 3 weeks since the incident. I have reviewed the comments from my previous post and considered the worst criticisms of myself. However, I did make mental, legal, and monetary preparations just in case. The following were the most popular criticisms. I appear to be jealous and/or insecure because I have such a bad reaction to seeing my wife having extraordinary nonverbal charisma with a close friend of the family. That this entire incident could be based on delusion, or projection, because of the fact I cheated 6 years ago, and we discussed this before we married. Our therapist has so far deemed this as my own irrational experience. Eye ducking her brother's best friend isn't worthy of divorce. There's no such thing as eye ducking, in which case you're not experienced because there definitely is. You deserve to be disrespected because you cheated first. Doesn't matter how long ago, or whether or not you repeated the mistake. Let's look at the facts. One of our first arguments was very early in our relationship, based on that I did not appreciate the energy my wife was giving Elle at a breakfast function. Later Elle would attend family get-together, and my feelings, my wife's attention to him dissipated over time. I even played board games and went to the gym with Elle and brother-in-law on a couple of occasions. My wife and Elle had no online activity, never liked each other's posts, etc. As my wife stated, she was never close to Elle because Elle was a jerk when he dated her best friend. My wife met with her brother's best friend, we can call him Elle, to attend Elle's sister's wedding 2 years ago. There was only one invitation for her. She spent the night out. I thought nothing of it. A year ago, or so, my wife became exponentially distant. My wife and Elle became active on social media, liking posts and messaging each other on innocuous occasions such as birthdays, Mother's Day, death remembrances, etc. 6 months ago, my wife began to exhibit extreme behavioral changes, or what most would consider to be red flags for cheating spouse. I checked her Apple Watch randomly 5 months ago and discovered a text to her female friend stating she would hook up with someone if I was unable to attend this year's family vacation. I immediately sought couples counseling. 4 months ago, she has news for me that Elle would unexpectedly be attending, that she had nothing to do with it, because her cousin invited him, her brothers and host of the event did not invite. 1 month ago, I lovingly told my wife that I feel Elle is attending for her sake, and I could be wrong, but I feel discomfort. My wife told me that she wants me to feel discomfort and will not validate me. The trip. Day 1, Elle brought a Bluetooth speaker and played, "Your Man Don't Deserve You" type songs, as they were locked eyes in what appeared to be a drunk-like flirtatious state. I immediately told my wife I felt uncomfortable. Day 1. Wife told me that if I said anything she will cause a scene and tell everyone I am insecure. Day 2, 4th of July. They appeared to never let one another out of their sight, checking in almost every minute, all day and all night. Day 3 and 4, we attended a water park and they left each other alone as far as I could tell, but I was busy with the kids for a good portion. Day 5, night. My wife told me in an odd and robotic tone that she is going downstairs, where Elle might see her, to grab the tablet charger and some milk. Upon her return I noticed she wore a flimsy t-shirt which barely covered half of her ass, and no bra or underwear. I asked why no underwear and she said she only had 2 clean pair left. We also had access to laundry which we used later in the trip. Day 6, baseball game. They begin starting at each other. Is there something I'm missing here? Are these not clearly red flags by anyone's standards? Or am I possibly just delusional? Or is it a little bit of both my insecurities, and her behaving promiscuous? This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the relationship stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video and write a comment. I really appreciate your support and it helps my channel so much. Thank you.